Shalom Lekulam, and welcome to this lesson on Havdalah. This is the 8th lesson on the Shabbat series, and we're going to be talking about how Havdalah has to do with or is related to the Sephirah daat, and how daat is necessary for the discernment or separation of things from the holy and the secular, but also how daat or Havdalah at the same time, it helps us unite things that are supposed to be divided. Also, we're going to learn how Havdalah, even though it's a separation between the holy and the secular, has to do with Tikkun Olam, or the fixing of the world as we know it. So I hope you stay with us after the introduction so you can learn in depth all the things that Havdalah has to offer, even though it's a short ritual that we do at the end of Shabbat, but how powerful it is in order to connect the energies of Shabbat with the other days of the week that follow. So I'll see you after the introduction. Welcome back. In this lesson, as we mentioned in the introduction, we're going to be talking about Havdalah, how Havdalah has to do with separating between the holy and the secular, but also how Havdalah is also important to unify the energies that we receive in Shabbat to the energies that we're going to work on during the next week, the next 6 days of the week, and how they are related. Also, how Havdalah has to do with Tikkun Olam, with fixing the world, mending the world we're living in. And we're going to learn about this in this lesson. And we're going to go in depth in each of the sections of the Havdalah and how we are supposed to meditate and have the right intention when it comes to these prayers that we're doing, these actions that we're doing, and also work internally and see how this internal work can connect us to a higher realm. Even though we're separating the holy and the secular, we're still connecting to the holy through this ritual, and also through the meditation that this ritual represent. So in Kabbalah, there's some meals that we do in Shabbat, right? And we remember, if we remember in lesson number 7, these 3 meals are going to represent these elevations of the world, 3 elevations, right? And these elevations were connected to the rectification of the sin of the Adam HaRishon. Adam HaRishon is the first Adam, the Adam that we see in the Bible in the Garden of Eden, right? And the idea is that the observance of Shabbat and the enjoyment of these meals will provide an opportunity to correct the spiritual damage caused by the transgression of Adam's sin. Now, Adam brought sin, or what we call a breaking or disconnection from the spiritual realm, by using egoistic vessels before they were really ready to receive the light. And these vessels that broke, or the breaking of the soul of Adam, it's each and every one of us. We are not only pieces of that main vessel or collective soul we call Adam HaRishon, but we also ourselves feel disconnected, not only from the Creator, but also from each other. And we find that we separate ourselves from each other And we find that we look for reasons, excuses to separate ourselves, whether we separate ourselves by nationalities, race, sex, or any other like political affiliations and things like that. We always try to find a way to separate ourselves. And this is because of the breaking that happened within our soul. Our egoistic nature makes us see each other as different, as I am who I am, you are who you are, but we don't see each other as one soul, that we need each other and we're part of each other. What Shabbat is trying to give us is basically an example of how it will be in the world to come, basically the world of Atzilu, in which everyone will be one soul. So something that will be interesting for those of you uh, who study Judaism. Those of you who are Jewish already know this. Those of you who don't know anything about Judaism might want to research this. But every Jewish person in the world that celebrates Shabbat, they celebrate Shabbat in the same day. They do it in the same time, when the sun goes down to the sun goes down the next day, right? From Friday night to Saturday evening. And this is something that all of them practice, right? Although if Israel practice that, because that's a temple in time. It's a opportunity to connect with that realm that we call the world of Atzilut. And we do this through these three elevations we call the three meals of Shabbat, that we do physically, but also we meditate on them in a spiritual level. So Shabbat gives us that opportunity, but then Shabbat cannot last forever, right? These elevations take us to a level from Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, so we acquire this extra soul, right? And after we acquire that extra soul that connects us to the original soul called Adam HaRishon, when Havdalah comes, we need to go back down to what is called the 6 days of creation, which is um, a place in which we're going to start working again in corrections. And what we're doing is, during this time that we call the 6 days of creation, is that we are working on getting ready for the next ascension, for the next 3 ascension, okay? So I'm not gonna go over the 3 ascensions because that's part of the previous lesson on the 3 meals, right? But if you really look, when we are celebrating Havdalah, we're separating ourselves from the world of Atzilut and going back down to the world that we need to fix. And this is a word that is called Mador Klipot, which is a place of the Klipot. And what are the Klipot? The Klipot are shells that hold the light hostage within themselves. And we need to help these sparks basically being released back to the spiritual realm. And these sparks are sparks that fell down, whether it is the sparks from the Shevirah HaKalim, from the breaking of the vessels that happened before the breaking of the soul of Adam, or our own soul that needs to be elevated. It needs to be, in the religious term for that is called saved. We look for salvation. What is salvation, right? What is this salvation of God? Is that salvation is basically elevating our soul, connecting to the one soul called Adam HaRishon. And when we connect to that soul, we automatically are going to connect as well with the Creator and His light. So something very important here is that we are going to be using something called daat. And daat is a pseudo sephirah that is basically in between the 3 upper sephirot, Keter, Chokmah, and Bina, and the other 7 sephirot, which are the 7 days of creation, right? And daat is that door, if if you want to call it, or gate, from where we're going to discern between what is holy and what is not holy. And that plays a crucial role in the Havdalah ritual by integrating the spiritual insights gained during Shabbat into what we call the everyday life that we have. It bridges the sacred and the mundane, helping to apply the divine wisdom and light experience on Shabbat to the practical aspects that we're going to be experiencing here in what is called the weekdays. Havdalah marks the end of Shabbat, right? And it highlights the importance of what we call differentiation. It emphasizes in this distinction between the sacred and the ordinary, and between light and darkness, as we're going to see in one of the prayers that we do, blessings that we do. And it also emphasizes between the difference of the people of Israel and the nations. As you know, Israel is not a nation, a political nation that is physically in this world. It's also spiritual people. And these people are the people that are looking to connect directly with the Creator, Yashar El, right? Directly to El, to God. And the nations are not nations as we know them, right? Politically or physically, the nations are our egoistic nature. Israel is our altruistic nature that we need to basically elevate, that we need to develop within ourselves. And the nations are our egoistic nature that are going to be influenced by this altruistic nature in us called Israel. Now, the differentiation is a foundation. It's foundational to morality, as it defines the boundaries that give meaning to actions, such as observing Shabbat or following the laws of kashrut, the dietary laws. Without differentiation, the uniqueness and significance of these actions will be lost. But differentiation also suggests a similarity between things being separated. For example, the Torah has these laws of kashrut, or laws of keeping kosher, and differentiates between different animals that are very similar, such as those with minor imperfections. This requires daat, or what is called discriminating intelligence, which is essential for making meaningful distinctions in life as a whole. Havdalah involves recognizing subtle differences between similar entities, making a crucial aspect of modern spiritual life. When we look at creation, we're going to see that even though there's a lot of diversity, everything in creation shares a similar essence. God's acts of creation was also an act of Havdalah. So we're going to see that God is going to be differentiating between light and darkness. This is what is called a paradox of similarities, differences in creation, right? We're going to see similarity and differences that underscore the complexity of creation, where distinctions are made with a fundamentally unified existence. So everything is one, right? However, when we are looking at creation, we see things separated, right? But as a Kabbalist, you're going to see that everything has the same essence, come from the same essence. Everything is basically what in advanced Kabbalah we call everything is malchut. Everything is a vessel of receiving, right? So everything is united within that vessel, and the light connects everything. In the Talmud, we're going to see that the Talmud links daat with Havdalah, emphasizing that our ability to differentiate is a gift from God. Without this divine gift of intelligence, meaningful distinctions between things will be impossible. God desires a moral world where differences are significant, enabling humans to fulfill their purpose by recognizing and respecting these distinctions. This is why you're going to see that in Judaism, there's a lot of what you may call laws, 613 commandments, and then there's other rabbinical commandments and traditions that sometimes we follow, right? And this is because we have that differentiation that is a gift from God called daat. Havdalah reflects on another paradox as well. While it differentiates between the holy and the secular, it also unites. Shabbat is different from the weekdays, right? As we can see in here, the word of Atzilut, which is Shabbat, is different from the word or the worlds down here, the different levels down in what is called the Mador Klipot. And it's because here, the vessels that are used on that level are vessels of bestowal. Unlike down here, right, where we're gonna see is that these are vessels that are very egoistic. These vessels are basically not ready to receive the pure light like the vessels of bestowals that we have here. And this is necessary, and this is the necessity, I should say, of the work during the 6 days of the week, because we're working basically on elevating each day's our soul, elevating each day as well to that level of Shabbat. So Shabbat is a vessel. Shabbat is this vessel called Malchut, right? And what we're doing is by working on the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth day, we are correcting these days and elevating them to the point that they become channels or conduits through which the energy of Ava and Ima, which is Keter and Chokmah, will actually come down to Malchut. All right? And this is very important because these 6 days represent Seramping, and Malchut, which is the Nukva, represents the Shabbat, right? So Seramping is from the aspect of giving, is the male aspect, the aspect of giving, and Malchut is the aspect of receiving. So basically Shabbat is from the feminine aspect, and this is what we make these prayers about, basically the Lechad Odi, like we're celebrating this, but at the same time we're welcoming this feminine aspect to Shabbat, right? And unifying it with the masculine aspect that is going to give to this feminine aspect. And this is what we're doing here. So even though Havdalah is distinct from or make a distinction from the weekdays, and Shabbat is different than the weekdays, it blesses and elevates the weekdays. It's the same thing, for example, Israel is set apart from the nations. And we already talked about what is Israel and what are the nations. We're not talking about these political entities that we have in the physical realm only. However, when we look at Israel, Israel serves as a light to the nations. The holy and the mundane are separate, but ultimately the purpose is to sanctify the egoistic vessel, the material world. This unity within differentiation of the essence of Havdalah is unique. Guiding this differentiation that unites at the same time, it helps us to guide ourselves and navigate the complexities of life, and also to understand life purpose and meaning. That even though we think that a person or a situation might be separated from us, that does not mean that it will not affect us. We are all in this boat together. Whoever drills a hole in the boat will make us all sink, right? So this is the thing. Even though we're separated, we have different probably missions in life. Probably we come from different backgrounds, religious background, racial backgrounds, sex backgrounds, and things like that. At the end, we're all together. The essence is the same for everybody and for everything. And this is what Havdalah comes basically to teach us, that it's not only about separating the holy and the secular, but also understanding that we're separating, but at the same time, these two things depend on each other, right? Now, in the Talmud, as we mentioned, the connection of daat with Havdalah, it's made in a very obvious way. For example, we see in the Talmud that say, if there is no daat, discriminating intelligence, how can there be differentiation, right? It's from the Jerusalem Talmud, Berachot 5:2. The Talmud connects daat, knowledge, and Havdalah, separation, by including the Havdalah text in the evening prayers after Shabbat. The Talmud says that if there's no daat, how can there be Havdalah, right? This means that understanding, which is daat, is needed to perform Havdalah, which is a differentiation. In Kabbalah teaches that Havdalah is a reflection of the cosmic order. The distinctions made during the ritual is similar to the divine act of creation where God separated light and darkness, water from dry land, and the sacred from the ordinary. By performing Havdalah with daat, a person aligns with this cosmic order, recognizing the divine wisdom embedded in the fabric that we call reality. On the basic level, the Talmud says that Havdalah, or separation, needs the wisdom of a discriminating intelligence, daat. On a deeper level, it means that Havdalah is possible only because God gave us the ability to distinguish between different things in creation. As we mentioned before, it's a gift. If everything in the world is essentially divine and the same, how can we tell the difference between things, right? Even if we see light and darkness or call some things holy and other mundanes, these distinctions might seem insignificant if everything is basically the same. The Creator created the world to be meaningful and with purpose. He introduced differences and a variety of things so we can make distinction between these things. It's an opportunity that was given to us in order to understand the world that we're living, and also how can we make the best of this experience that we call life. So the Creator gives us this ability to understand and apply these distinctions also in our lives, so we will know what is good and what is bad, right? And what is best for us and what is best for everybody, and what is not good for us and what is not good for everybody. So this is very important to understand. Now, as you can see here, right, Shabbat is the word of Atzilut, and there's what is called a parsa, or a division, right? This parsa, or this partition, is what divides the weekdays from Shabbat. So Havdalah has to do with this parsa. This parsa is kind of like, not necessarily, so don't take this as the parsa is daat, right? In reality, this parsa is a malchut. It's a malchut of Atzilut, right? The tabur over here is also a malchut. So every division that divides anything that is in a higher realm, see it as a different malchut or level of malchut. It's a division. But in here, we can see that this partition, this Malchut of Atzilut, has also all the levels down here, which is called the weekdays. And for that, we need that, right? So remember the paradox that we talked about, right? In which Havdalah means to distinguish and separate things. However, the ultimate goal is to unite them. In the Torah, what we're going to see is that the Torah tells us that we need to remember and keep Shabbat. And we need to keep Shabbat distinct from the 6 workdays, making it in our thoughts, words, and action. However, Shabbat is closely connected to the weekdays. It is the peak of our weekly efforts, where everything we work for during the weekdays, it will come together in the fullest expression in Shabbat. And Shabbat blesses and energizes these days that follow. So what we're going to see is that we are basically working from Sunday to Friday on studying, meditating, preparing ourselves for Shabbat. Then in Shabbat, all the fruits of this effort will be basically put into one, unified into one, will manifest in that day. Then when we do Havdalah, the separation, well, the fruits that we had from the previous week that ended with Shabbat and ended on Havdalah will bless the following days. So think like you are climbing a ladder, right? So you're in Shabbat, 6 days, Shabbat, 6 days, Shabbat, 6 days, Shabbat, 6 days, Shabbat. So every week should be seen as a different higher level that you're achieving as you're connecting with Shabbat, and you're connecting or you're blessing also the following days after Shabbat with the previous Shabbat. And this is very important to keep in mind, because we're supposed to, and also this is important in studying the Torah portion, we're supposed to feel like we're climbing a ladder every year. I don't know about you, but every time we go through the Torah portion every year, when we study, let's say, the Torah portion Bemidbar, right? We study Bemidbar. Every year we'll learn something new. Every year we will have a new insight. And it's because we're elevating ourselves higher and higher. We're gaining not only knowledge, but we're gaining also a connection with that specific portion every year. And this is the importance of Shabbat. The Shabbat is not like, let's say, the portion that happens every year once. Shabbat is every week. So we have this opportunity every week. And Havdalah is basically the climbing of that ladder on every week. So it's very important to understand that. We are commanded also to maintain our identity as Jew, if you're Jewish, and distinguish ourselves from other nations. In other words, and from the spiritual point of view, you are commanded basically, if you are from the people that is called Israel, the spiritual Israel, to maintain that distinction between you being holy and the nations being secular, between your thoughts that are altruistic and the thoughts that are egoistic. Okay? However, Israel is meant to be a light into the nations. So sharing the values and teachings of the Torah with the entire world is important. That's why, even though we're not supposed to be converting people, because it's not our duty, people come to Israel or to the Jewish people by a calling, right? We can talk about Kabbalah only if people ask us, because their soul will be ready, and they will let they sense. People sense when people study Kabbalah, they sense that these people have something that they need. And they will ask you questions, and you can answer those questions. But remember, there is no obligation. You cannot force people into spirituality. They need to come by themselves. And that's why in Judaism, traditionally, there's no conversion or no proselyting. You come if you want to get converted. You do your own work, right? And you get accepted if you work properly. But in Kabbalah, we also do the same thing. We will not basically force you to anything. That we will not coerce you to anything because it's prohibited. You come because this is a calling. It's your soul. Your soul vibration is at that level that is ready to receive. So we can talk about it. You can learn about it, right? Do you necessarily need to convert to Judaism? No. Remember, there's a distinction between the holy and the secular. And being part of a religion does not necessarily mean spirituality. So there's a distinction between religion and spirituality. However, religion, just like Shabbat gives light to the weekdays, spirituality, meaning Kabbalah, gives light to the religion called Judaism. Or your own religion. If you are basically studying Kabbalah, you can see that there's some things that are universal in some religions, right? And you can use the Kabbalah to understand better your religion. Now, we're told to differentiate between what is holy and mundane, embracing what is sacred, divine, but also while doing this, being cautious about the material aspects of life, right? For example, you can be the kind of person that wants to separate yourself to become holy from other people, but this separation can become a breakage, right? If you're too religious, fanatically, religious, that's also a breakage. That does not mean you're connected. It's just religious, right? So you have to be careful with this division. It has to be a division that unites, a division that is because you are doing a work in which you're going to receive light to basically share with others. So you have to be careful with this. By recognizing these distinctions in our lives, we achieve our goals, our spiritual goals. Preserving the uniqueness of Shabbat allows it to enhance and elevate the other days of the week. The nations of the nation of Israel, and this is the spiritual nation that we're talking about, has something that is distinctive, and is that enable us, those who belong to the spiritual Israel, to give something valuable to the whole world. Keeping our spiritual lives separate from material concerns allow us to elevate the material and use it for spiritual purposes. And this is very important because if you understand, and I'm going to talk about religion because it's important. A lot of people think that being religious is what is going to help them save their soul, elevate their soul. And religion is a tool, and that tool needs someone to use that tool properly. And that can only be done if the person that is using that tool has this background of spirituality. If you don't inject religion with spirituality, it's a dead religion, dead actions, and it's just rituals. It's just a tradition. It doesn't go anywhere. It's like a prayer that is never heard because it's full of egoism. Even though it talks about God, even though it's what we read in the Siddur or a prayer book, it goes nowhere. It's not elevated because spirituality is not there. It's all egoistic. It's all about us, not about what we're supposed to be. It should be about us becoming that vessel, just like the 6 days of the week, to be that vessel that is going to bless the next generation, the people of the world, which is what Shabbat is all about us working to mend the world in order to help humanity elevate themselves to that level that we call the Olam Ha'aba, or the world to come. Okay? Now, the Havdalah ritual has different, I will say, different parts, right? It's based, on different blessings and different actions that we do. The first thing that we do is we light the Havdalah candle. We recite the first blessing and the blessing over the wine and grape juice. But remember, the Havdalah candle is not. There's no prayer yet there. There's no blessing for the lighting of the candle like we do in Shabbat. And here we're gonna see later is that there's a different blessing. But we light the candle, we do the blessing over the wine. Then what we do is we switch the cup to your other hand, meaning if you're right to the left, or if you're lefty from the right, right? And then recite the blessing over the spices. You pick the besamim, the spices, and smell the spices. And then, in some households, in some traditions, the spices are passed around. Like in my household, we pass the spices around so everybody can smell them, right? Then return the cup to the original hand and recite the blessing over the candle, ha'ish. But in reality, it's not over the candle, it's over the fire. It's the fire, the ha'ish, fire. And then you fold your fingers towards yourself and towards the light, basically looking at your nails, okay, as you do this blessing. And in our tradition, right, we not only look, we also put our hands over our eyes. It's like, yes, we're looking at our hands, but at the same time, it's like bringing light to our eyes. And then we recite the final blessing, in which we do blessing and we separate between the holy and the secular. Then there's a ritual in which drink most of the wine that is on that cup, and then the remaining wine, which usually the cup is overflowed, and the wine that overflow falls into a little tray or a plate, and then what is left there is used to snuff out or turn off the fire on the candle. And then after that, after Havdalah, it is common to sing Eliyahu Hanavi, which is a song that has to do with Eliyahu the prophet and the world to come, the world of redemption. Okay, so let's look at each of these and learn a little more, or go deeper into what they represent. But let's read some stuff before we start talking about these different sections of the Havdalah ritual. So in Tikkun Zohar 143b says the following: Bereshit, in the beginning, this includes two fire, which are the two flames referred to in the blessing, blessed is the creator of the lights of fire. And in this regard, it is written, sustain me with cakes, that is, with two fires. Why is sustain me said in this context? This refers to the eves of Shabbat, when an additional soul descends in the order to support the lower Shekhinah in exile, of whom it is said, fallen, not rise again, is the maiden of Israel. When Shabbat reaches its end, this additional soul leaves, of which it is written, God was refreshed, ve'inafash. This is the meaning of ve'inafash. As soon as it leaves, O to the soul, va'nefesh. For nobody is left to support her. In such moments, she cries out to Israel, support me with ashishot, that is, with lights of fire. What are these fires? Two Torahs, carved of fire, which are Elohim, the aspect of might. These are known as the teachings of the Lord, two lips of burning flames, and two apples out of which the Spirit of the Messiah comes, of which he said, the Spirit of the Lord shall alight on him. So this is from Tikkun Zohar. We have here an allusion that this fire that we light in Havdalah is a fire that is very important. We're gonna see later, that this fire, let's put it this way: in Shabbat, we're not supposed to light fire, right? But this one, we need to light it at the end of Shabbat, and we need to have some benefit out of it as well, in order to be able to transfer that energy to the following days of the week. Also, Tikkun Zohar says, "It was stated, bone of my bones, the very essence of the heavens in purity. The art surely refers to the heart, a burning flame encompassing 32 paths. And this is Shabbat, in which the higher Shekhinah dwells, and which is the Torah of the wise, and through it the heart understands. This is the Neshama Yetera, the extra soul of Shabbat, and it represents the freedom of Shabbat. Because of it, the masters of Gehinnom do not rule over the world. And what is Gehinnom without the body? It is the liver, which corresponds to the copper altar, intended to be removed from the world. The liver is the place where bitterness of Gehinnom burn within it." And when you look at this, you're going to see that when we talks about the liver, the heart, and things like that, it's talking about the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama, and all that. And something that we're going to learn later. And gate 50, and the gate 50 is what we're basically looking at here is the Eschaim, right? Know that just as the holiness, there are human souls that originate from the innermost parts of the worlds, and the souls of angels come from the outer aspects of the worlds. As it is known, so too the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is the klipa of Noga. From its innermost part emanates the soul of the good inclination, the Yeser HaTov, and the evil inclination, the Yeser Hara. From its outer aspects comes the angels and demons that oversee the world's affairs, stars, and constellations. Thus, the demons in this world are the eternal aspects of the demon that correspond to the evil inclination of humans. Understand these well. Regarding the concept of Hasmal, it appears in Parshat Yetro in Eschaim 78a as representing Tiferet. The idea is as follows. It is known that the Tikkunim of Abba, Chokmah, that the name Havaya, the Yohe and the Vahe, is associated with Chesed, and the name Adonai with Geburah. In Tiferet, these two names are combined as Yahadonai, which is akin to Hasmal, representing fiery energy that speaks. These two names symbolize fire from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, as mentioned in Tikkun 10. They are called speaking because they are twins, possessing both mouth and tongue, as mentioned in Parshat Yetro. The mouth corresponds to Adonai and the tongue to Havaya. These are the two lights that emerge from the Hasmal, white and red, as mentioned there. It is known that Tiferet is called a year, and thus these lights correspond to the 365 lights, the day of the year, as mentioned here. When the letter Vav in its full form joins them, representing Tiferet, it equals the numerical value of Hasmal. Although it is also known that Hasmal is the outer garment of Binah, like the wings of an eagle that covers its offsprings. It descends from her 6 extremities, which is Serampin, or Tiferet, being called Hasmal as well. Indeed, it is from her Serampin that a garment is made for Serampin and Nukva, which is Mahut, who are also the Serampin of Atzilut. This garment of Serampin of Bina clothes Serampin and separate them from the Klipa of Noga Similarly, in the four worlds of Asilut, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, Hasmal is within Klipa Noga, representing both Tiferet and Binah. Do not be surprised if sometimes Tiferet is mentioned as being from Klipa Noga, other times from Malchut, and sometimes from Ima Ila'ah, which is a higher Binah, or what is called also the throne. Know that on Friday, the vessels of the worlds ascend above their place and are clothed in higher lights than they usually have. Thus, every aspect in all the worlds receive an additional soul on Shabbat as the vessel, meaning the body, ascends and takes on lights that are on a higher soul level than it had during the week. Therefore, on Shabbat, the good within the vessels of Klipa Noga ascends and receives an additional elevated soul. Consequently, the person who is a combination of good and evil inclinations that come from Klipa Noga also has his soul garments, his good and evil inclinations elevated and clothed with a higher soul than during the weekdays. This process allows every part to acquire an additional soul. To that, even the Keter receives an extra soul as it ascends above its place. Therefore, additional souls, spirits, and breath do not come all at once, because first the Sephirah must ascend above its place, and from there the additional soul is drawn to a person. Thus, their ascent occurs in stages from below to above. Therefore, on Friday, during Kabbalah Shabbat, Klipa Noga alone ascends with a new soul, granting the person an additional soul. Then on Friday night, all aspects of the soul, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama ascend, and the person receives additional spirit and soul. The vessel of Keter does not move from its place to ascend until the Musaf prayer, because at that time Serampin ascends to Abba and Ima, and they in turn ascend to Keter. Therefore, the Keter also ascends, and from there, the additional soul is drawn to the person during the Musaf prayer. So, this explains basically this ascension of the soul, these three ascensions, the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, right? So, what we're doing is elevating the Nefesh to the Ruach place, and the Ruach to the Neshama. And when we do that, then we're elevating everything else, right? And what it's telling us is that, as you can see here, Serampin, right? Serampin can be also, when it's connected to the Nukva, right? It can be also said that it's down here, right? Why? Because even though Serampin is up here, there's a Nukva, the Mahut, over here, right? That divides the upper and the lower. But down here you can see Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, and Yetzirah will be that aspect of Serampin, Asiyah, the Mahut, and Bria will be the Ava and the Ima. So you can see it that way as well. But this elevation gives us that extra soul, basically like the elevation that happened during the correction of the worlds. The Adam Harishon, the soul of Adam, was born, right, within that ascension. So the same thing happened every Shabbat. A new soul is added to our soul, and so we can reach that, okay? But in Havdalah, we need to go back to reality, right? To the place that we need to work once again to elevate ourselves. And this is something that is a constant work, and eventually we will rend its fruit. And that's why, I'm reading this one so you can understand what is really happening during this separation, okay? So let's go to the Havdalah ritual, right, and see what's happening to each of in each of these sections of the ritual. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna light the Havdalah candle. For Havdalah, we use a braided candle. Why we don't do the blessing over the fire or over the candle this time? And this is how we're going to explain it. before the creation of the sun and the moon, God created a great light. A light so bright that one could gaze from one end of the earth to the other with it. When it was very late Friday afternoon, the sixth day of creation, and Adam and Eve had just sinned by eating from the forbidden fruit, there was a consequence. God wanted to hide this bright primordial light and then expel Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. But because of the sanctity of Shabbat, God postponed his actions and left the light to shine until the end of the sacred day. When the sun began to set at the termination of Shabbat, meaning when Havdalah was supposed to happen, darkness set in for the first time. This terrified Adam's soul, who thought that darkness would engulf him. God then inspired Adam, who took two stones and struck them against each other, and fire burst forth. At that moment, Adam praised God and said the blessing, "Blessed are you, O Lord, who creates the light of the fire." The very same blessing we say as part of Havdalah while gazing to the flickering flames. But when we light these flames in Havdalah, we don't do that blessing until later. Fire is an unique creation. For unlike all other creations, we make a special blessing commemorating the times it was created. The reason for this is that since the use of fire is prohibited through Shabbat, and it becomes permitted only on Saturday night, it is as the fire was created anew each week with the departure of Shabbat. So that's why we do a special blessing for the fire, like if it was, or like it is a new creation, as something new, a special moment. In Havdalah, or in the symbolism behind the Havdalah candle, is not only the symbolism of being braided, is because with these multiple weeks that are intertwined, we will learn that is, or we should see, or we should visualize in our mind that these different braided weeks that are intertwined, they represent interconnectedness and unity of the divine emanations that we call the Sefirot. Each of these weeks represent a different aspect of divine light and energy, and their coming together illustrate how various divine attributes are unified into a single coherent force. So even though they're different weeks, they're burned as one fire, one flame. The light of Havdalah candle thus signifies the integration of these diverse spiritual elements into this unified whole. So here we're seeing that through this candle that we're using to separate between the holy and the secular, we are still thinking of the unity among all the days of the week. These multiple flames of the Havdalah candle symbolize the dual aspect of the divine transcendence and immanence. Transcendence refers to this divine presence that exists beyond the physical world, while the immanence signifies the divine presence that permeates and sustains all aspects of creation. The flame on this candle represents the divine light that both transcends and emanates through the universe, illuminating the distinctions between the sacred and the secular at the same time. According to Kabbalah, the light of the Havdalah candle reflects on the divine emanations of the Sefirot, right? And the candle is seen, as a symbolism of these divine attributes blending together, as we mentioned before. The act of using this multi-wicked candle in Havdalah represents the process of separating the holy from the mundane while simultaneously integrating them within a greater divine context. The separation is marked by Havdalah is not just a physical act but a spiritual one, where the divine light helps to delineate and sanctify the transition from the sacred time of Shabbat to the secular time of the weekdays. The candle lights help us in bringing this transition, ensuring that the sanctity of Shabbat infuses the upcoming week. In Kabbalah, light is associated with what we call the divine wisdom and enlightenment. The Havdalah candle, specifically the light that we are at that moment, because we light the candle and we're supposed to have some benefit out of it. We're benefiting from that light, right? The candle light is seen as a means of illuminating the spiritual darkness that may exist in the whole world. Specifically, as Shabbat ends and the mundane week start at that moment, the illumination symbolizes the infusion of divine clarity and purpose into the everyday life that will follow after we do this division of the holy and the secular. When we light this candle of Havdalah, we need to keep in mind that this will be an act that will connect us individually with the divine, and that will connect humanity with the divine source of the light. It helps us align with the divine will and knowledge and the omnipresence of the Creator, both in the sacred things that we do and the mundane things that we do. So during our study and during our everyday work. This candle light serves as a reminder of the light that is divine, that is everywhere in creation. And this candle also helps us remember that this light is a representation of a physical light, but also it's a counterpart of that light that we used to basically enjoy when we were in Gan Eden, this primordial light that was hidden until the end of days. So let's keep that in mind whenever we are lighting the Havdalah candle. After the Havdalah candle, we do the blessing over the wine, specifically what is called the Borei Pri Hagafen. Wine in Kabbalah is often associated with divine abundance and joy. It represents the flow of divine blessings and the sweetness of spiritual revelation. In Havdalah, the wine symbolizes the ultimate joy and sanctity of Shabbat, which is now being transitioned into a regular day of the week. When we bless the wine, we're acknowledging the divine abundance and we seek to carry this spiritual significance into the following days of the week. The process of transformation of grapes into wine is seen as a metaphor for the spiritual transformation that happens through divine intervention. In Kabbalah, the transformation reflects the ascent from the mundane to the sacred. The wine blessing during Havdalah signifies this elevation, as it involves moving from the sanctity of Shabbat to the everyday week while seeking to retain and channel the spiritual elevation of that Shabbat that we just celebrated. The wine blessing is seen as an invocation or divine wisdom. In Kabbalistic tradition, the wine is linked to the Sephirah Chokmah, wisdom, which is the source of all divine light and insight. The blessing over the wine during Havdalah does represent a request for divine wisdom and guidance on one's transition from the elevated spiritual state of Shabbat to the regular days of the week. When we do that blessing, we're integrating and elevating the spiritual energies experienced during the Shabbat. And spiritually speaking, Shabbat is a time when divine light is available for us. It's accessible. And the one blessing during Havdalah is a way to channel this light into the coming week. As we mentioned before, this Shabbat will elevate us into, it will make us, like in a ladder, it will be, the next week will be a different step on that ladder. It will help us to receive the following Shabbat in a higher level. Also, there's another deep aspect in this blessing that we do over the wine, because this blessing over the wine also symbolizes the union of the divine and the earthly. In the thoughts of our sages, the wine represents divine abundance in this ritual of Havdalah, right? It represents the separation of the sacred and the mundane, come together, where the sacred and the mundane will come together and create this harmonious balance. This balance reflects a mystical idea of the divine presence that can be found in every aspect of life, including those that are not spiritual in essence. The blessing also brings holiness into the week, like we mentioned before. By sanctifying the wine and making a blessing, we elevate the whole entire week. We're making sure that the divine presence continues to infuse every day of the following week. After we do the blessing over the wine, we do a blessing over the spices. So when you do the blessing over the wine, I almost forgot, it's the same blessing we do all the time over the wine. There's no different blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen, right? And that's blessed are you, King or God of the universe, who created the fruit of the vine, right? Now for the spices, what we do is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamin. Besamin meaning, the spices, right? Blessed are your Lord, King of the universe, who creates various kinds of spices. And the spices in Havdalah represent the sweetness and renewal that follows the end of Shabbat. And in Kabbalistic traditions, they symbolize a divine pleasure and joy that permeate the end of the sacred time of Shabbat and the beginning of the new week. Just as these spices provide a pleasant aroma, they signify the divine presence and spiritual refreshment that one seeks to carry into the following week. Now, in Kabbalah, the spices are seen as nourishment for the soul. The pleasure of smelling the spices represents the spiritual nourishment and delight that one derives from the divine presence. The spices also can be linked to various sephirot, or divine attributes. Each spice represents different aspects of divine light and energy. For example, the pleasant aroma of the spices reflect the Sefirat Tiferet, beauty and harmony, right? Which balances and harmonizes various divine attributes. The spices symbolize the harmonization of the divine energies and their integration to the weekly cycle. Now, when you smell the spices during Havdalah, as we said, it was like awakening of the soul. It says that these spices are believed to stimulate the spiritual senses and brings one attention to the divine presence that is permeating, is everywhere, in everything in existence. The spices also are related to the sense of smell, right? And it's because the sense of smell holds a unique and profound spiritual significance. Unlike the other senses, which are more directly connected to physicality, smell is considered to have a closer connection to the soul. For example, the sense of smell is linked to the soul, particularly, the neshama, the higher level of the soul. This connection is based on the idea that smell is a more spiritual sense because it doesn't involve direct physical contact like touch and taste. The neshama is considered the most spiritual and divine aspect of the soul, and because smell can evoke deep memories and emotions without any physical interaction, it is seen as connected to this higher soul level. Also, the sense of smell is also believed to be the remnant of the pure. Attain this experience that we had in the Garden of Eden, all the other senses were basically somehow, in a way, they were infused with some kind of negative energy, but the sense of smell wasn't. It says, touch, they ate, right? They saw the fruit, but it doesn't say that they smell, right? So this is something that we need to keep in mind. So the interpretation, Kabbalistic interpretation, is that the extra soul, the neshama yeteira, lives with the conclusion of Shabbat. The spices help us conform, revive the remaining soul. The pleasant fragrance help to bridge the transition from the spiritual elevation of Shabbat to the more mundane nature of the weekdays. So because we still have that sense that is not completely broken, and it's a sense of smell that wasn't infused with this negative energy, doesn't involve any physical interaction as well, and also it has to do also with breath, right? It is says, this is or neshama, the connection, that extra soul, that soul that connects us to the Garden of Eden, as we saw, right? The neshama yetira, which is a spark or insight into what is the Adam Harishon's soul. Also, something very important, we mentioned Havdalah has to do with the Tikkun Olam. So the sense of smell is also connected to the coming of the Messiah. In a Midrash, it says that the Messiah will judge by smell, meaning he will be able to discern truth and righteousness beyond what is physically visible. This underscores the idea that smell is linked to deeper spiritual insights and perception transcending the limitations of all this material world, right? Now, when we do the blessing, the besamim, or the blessing over the spices, now we're going to do the blessing over the fire. Like I said, you got to make sure that you're pointing the fingers towards you, looking at your nails, right? And in our tradition, we don't only do that, we also put our hands over our eyes. So when you're doing the blessing over the wine, you are also using, your senses, right? You're touching, you're tasting, right? Or at the end, you're going to taste, So there's a lot of things that we don't do here. We do the blessing over the wine, we don't drink. We do the blessing over the spices, but we do smell. So it's the neshama. So we go from this higher level, the neshama, and then we're going to start lowering ourselves into the physical realm. So now we go with the Aish. There's a division, right? Now this light of Shabbat, this light that is a primordial light, is hidden from us, and the fire represents the physical fire that will help us then basically navigate this world. And now we go and do the blessing over the Ish, right? The fire. And the main purpose of the Havdalah candle, as we mentioned before, is to help us mark the end of the Shabbat, and the beginning of the new week. When we recite the blessing over the fire, we are helping ourselves and whoever is participating with us in this ritual to visually experience the light. The candlelight is important in the ritual. It makes everything more impactful, something that you will remember, all right? Because light is fire, right? It's an element that can burn you, can hurt, but at the same time can help us see and discern between what is darkness and what is not. This blessing over the fire, Borei Borei Morei Haish, right? It is recited after the blessing of the spices. So we go from smelling now to seeing, right? And we're not only seeing, we're also feeling. We're gonna feel the heat of this candle. So you have to focus on the tangible manifestation of this divine light before acknowledging it through the blessing. Uh, this reflects the idea that the divine light illuminates and defines the transition from holiness of Shabbat to an ordinary week. This light represents the divine presence that bridges the gap between the sacred and the mundane. And during the Havdalah, we use a special multi-wick candle, right? That represent this intense spiritual light of Shabbat. And also these different aspects becoming one. When we look at our nails, right? The nails are shiny and reflect the light, symbolizing the reflection of divine light that we carry into the week. In Kabbalah, teaches that this act serves as a reminder of the divine sparks within us and our mission to carry the holiness of Shabbat into the mundane work. By focusing on the nails, we acknowledge our ability to reflect and channel spiritual energy. Nails are part of the body but are non-living extensions, right? In Kabbalah, they represent the boundary between the physical and the spiritual realms. When we look at our nails during Havdalah, we meditate on the balance between these two aspects of our existence, how to stay connected to spirituality, and at the same time, how we engage to the physical world. The Zohar says that one should focus on their nails because the light of the Havdalah candle resembles the primordial light of creation, which was hidden away, the organus, right? This light was hidden away for the righteous in the future. By looking at our nails, we symbolically connect to that hidden light, reminding ourselves of the spiritual potential within us and the world, because we're supposed to be light to the nation, right? So the next thing that we're going to do is that as we gaze into the nails and we recite the blessing over the fire or the candle, there's something important. We are also having what is called benefit from the flame. It's customary and it's important to ensure that one has a close enough benefit from the light of the candle before making the blessing. It is thought by our teachers that the light should be sufficient to differentiate between the coins of different countries. When we examine our nails in the candlelight to distinguish between the nails and the surrounding skin, this act emphasizes the importance of the light's benefit without having to use coins, right? As we prepare to begin a new week, we look at our fingernails, which are seen as a symbol of continuous blessing because they never stop growing. This serves as a reminder of ongoing divine abundance. Also, and this is something very interesting, because this is something that in Kabbalah is taught a lot, is according to the Midrash, Adam and Eve were initially clothed in a translucent nail-like garment. After the sin, this special covering was lost except for the actual nails. This connection to the original state of humanity adds a layer of meaning to the act of gazing at our nails in the light of the candle. Another tradition from the Midrash holds that the first fire, which Adam and Eve created, came from his fingernails. Looking at our fingernails during these blessings on the fire is a way to connect to this ancient story. It also says in the Midrash that by gazing at the nails in the Havdalah candlelights, we symbolically weaken these forces that are negative and surrounding us, preparing ourselves to face the next week again ahead. This is different traditions and midrashim when it comes to looking at the fingernails. So what is a blessing we do? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei morei haish. Blessed are you, Allah, King of the universe, who creates the light of the fire. And I have put here, reference to the midrashim that I have just talked about, if you want to look them up. Then we recite the final blessing. And as you can see, this lesson is going to take probably 1 hour and a half. There's a lot to cover, and it's very important. Because we're covering just the ritual of Havdalah in this lesson. So we recite the final blessing, which is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamadib ben kodesh lechol, ben aur lechoshech, ben Israel amin, beyom hashivi'i lesheshet ya'amei hamaaseh. Baruch atah Adonai, hamadib ben kodesh lechol, which is blessed are you, O Lord, King of the universe, who separates between holy and mundane, between light and darkness, between Israel and the nations, between the 7th day of the week and the 6 days of work. Blessed are you, O Lord, who separates between holy and mundane. This last blessing in the Havdalah ceremony, called the Hamadib ben Kodesh Lechol, has a very deep significant meaning. It has a lot of information, a lot of things that we can actually take from it. It emphasizes the time of separation. It emphasizes also between the sanctity of Shabbat and the ordinary days of the week. And the concept of separation is important in this prayer. It separates also, it says, it separates between the holy and the mundane, between Israel and the nation, between light and darkness, and the 6 days and the day of Shabbat, right? So it's important to understand this thing. The idea of separation is not merely about distinguishing one time period from another, but it reflects the process of creating boundaries between different spiritual states. Shabbat is seen as a time for spiritual elevation, while the days are seen as lower levels of spiritual connection. When Shabbat ends, there is a descent into the more material world of the weekday. The blessing acknowledges and sanctifies this transition and gives power to the idea that while we're moving to the mundane, we still have with us the spiritual light of Shabbat. Also, blessing talks about the holy and the mundane, right? From Kodesh and also the whole mundane. In Kabbalah, we see these both aspects as essential for spiritual growth. The 6 weekdays represent 6 lower Sefirot related to action and creation, while Shabbat corresponds to the Sefirah Malchut, which represents receptivity, receiving, the will to receive, and the culmination of spiritual work. The last blessing of Havdalah help us reflect on this dynamic and the balance between these two forces, the force of giving and the force of receiving. Also, the transition from the holy and the mundane is not a descent but an opportunity for elevation. The mundane world is seen as a place where spiritual sparks are hidden, and the task of the people that are studying Kabbalah and spirituality is to elevate and reveal those sparks through their actions during the week. In the Havdalah blessing, we can actually connect and understand and attain a level in which we are going to be reminded that even as we live this higher spiritual state called Shabbat, our purpose is to infuse the weekdays with holiness and meaning. Just like we're supposed to be a light to the nations, we're supposed to also use the light of Shabbat for the weekdays. So, in Havdalah, the ceremony of Havdalah corresponds to the flow of divine energy through the Sefirot, the 10 attributes of emanations that we know of the tree of life. The last blessing, Hamadib ben Kodesh Lechol, can be seen as reflecting the movement from Bina, which is associated with Shabbat, and contemplation, to malchut, which is kingship associated with the manifestation of divine will in this material world. And you're going to say, but you just said that malchut was Shabbat, and now you say Bina. Remember, malchut is Shabbat when it's elevated to the level of Bina. Malchut receives, right? But if it receives all the time, then malchut is not a receiver. It's just receiving for the sake of receiving. It's an egoistic reception. But when we elevate malchut, and this is what Shabbat is, remember the ascensions of the word, we elevate malchut to that level that we call Shabbat. Malchut is like Bina. It's from the aspects of bestowal. So that's why, Bina or malchut in Bina is called Shabbat. And then malchut, when it's down, is called kingship. Malchut in the secular sense of looking at it. It's called kingship. Or the manifestation of that Bina into the physical world when we receive in order to bestow. Okay? So, this transition from Bina to Malchut signifies bringing down the spiritual insights that we attain during Shabbat into a practical action. So remember, every Shabbat we're learning something new with the Torah portion. And every Shabbat, we need to go to the next week and utilize that light that we just attained during the previous week and culminating with that Shabbat. We need to bring that light into the next week. Also, by making this action or ritual Havdalah, we not only all separating between holy and secular, we're also creating a spiritual boundary, a protective boundary. This separation creates a spiritual safeguard that helps us preserve the holiness of Shabbat and protecting the individual from potential spiritual pitfalls on the mundane work, which are called the weekdays. By recognizing this separation, we bring down divine protection into our lives, and we ensure that the influence of Shabbat continues to shield us throughout the following week. Also, the last blessing of Havdalah is connected to the concept of Tikkun Olam, the fixing of the world. Kabbalah teaches that the world was created with divine sparks embedded within it, and through our actions we can help elevate these sparks. The distinction between holy and mundane in the Havdalah blessing reminds us of our task of being basically a bridge between these two realms, the spiritual and the physical realm, by sanctifying the mundane world and bringing the mundane world into closer to the divine source. And when we do this, these sparks are trapped in the physical realm get liberated. Right? There's the importance of the blessings that we do during the weekdays and the prayers that we do during the weekdays, because that's our work, elevating the sparks. And Shabbat, or the following Shabbat, is going to be the culmination of that. It's going to be in a higher level. And we're going to take that higher level that we just attained into the following week. And every week should be a higher level, climbing of that ladder. Okay? This is the importance of this. Then after that, we drink most of the wine and then extinguish the Havdalah candle with the remaining wine. Why do we extinguish the Havdalah candle with the wine? It's because there's some mystical significance in it. Symbolizes the interplay of what is called spiritual forces and the balance between these different elements, fire and water. And you may say, wine has alcohol. Yeah, but it's mostly water, right? It's also signifying the aspects of holiness and mundane, and the transition from sanctity of Shabbat to the weekdays. And what they do is basically, it's like by doing that, we're bringing them to balance, right? We're putting them, we're joining them together, not mixing them. When you mix, you are not doing the right thing, right? You have to unite things. You do unifications. You don't do mixing. You cannot mix one thing with the other, right? So fire and water are opposites. Fire represents the element of Geburah, and water represents the elements of Chesed, meaning Geburah's judgment, and Chesed is kindness, compassion. And Kabbalah, balancing these opposing forces is essential for harmony in the world. And if you have studied, this Shabbat series, you're gonna see that Shabbat is about balancing these two sides and bringing them into the middle, into the center. All right. This act signifies that even as we move from the holiness of Shabbat, associated with Chesed, to the more challenging weekdays, which are associated with Geburah, we seek harmonious balance between these forces in our lives. The wine also symbolizes holiness. The wine symbolizes the sanctity of Shabbat. By using the wine to extinguish the fire, we metaphorically infuse the mundane week with the holiness and spiritual blessings of Shabbat. This act represents the idea that the sanctity of Shabbat continues to influence and elevate the week ahead, right? And this multi-wicked, candle braided into one might be symbolizing also the weekday and the wine, the Shabbat, and how these two come together, right? Now, fire is linked to judgment, right? And as we mentioned, wine is represented by Shabbat, which is mercy, water, holiness. Extinguishing the flame with wine symbolizes the sweetening of or softening this judgment. So wine, even though it has alcohol, or even if it's not wine, it's grape juice, it's sweet. So we're sweetening this judgment, the din. This is important as we transition from the peacefulness of Shabbat into potentially harsh realities of the weekdays. When we do this, we're trying to temper or sweeten these harsh judgments and invite a more merciful and compassionate energy into our lives. Also, this action of extinguishing the flame with the wine can see as a symbol of transformation. Fire represents this intense spiritual light of Shabbat, while water represents the more grounded and more physical world, right? So now we see it in a different way, right? And now we're like changing the fire of Shabbat and the stillness of the water on the physical, right? When we extinguish the flame with the wine, we're basically symbolizing the transition of spiritual energy from Shabbat into the weekday. But what we're doing is transforming this energy into a force that can be harnessed in our everyday life. Also, this action has to do with Tikkun, right? With purification of our senses. In this ceremony of Havdalah, all five senses are engaged. Sight, because of the candle; smell, because of the spices; taste, because of the wine; hearing, because of the blessings; and touch, by holding the cup and the candle. When we extinguish the flame with the wine, this can be seen as part of a broader process of tikkun, rectification of the senses. This final act unites the senses in a harmonious conclusion on this ceremony, symbolizing the rectification of the material world through this spiritual practice. The act of extinguishing the fire with wine can also be seen as a way to seal the blessings of Shabbat. The leftover wine, imbued with the sanctity of the Havdalah blessings, is often used to bless one's home, symbolizing that the spiritual protection and blessing of Shabbat are carried into the week. We have a tradition in our home that we dip our index finger in the plate of the wine that is left over, and then we put it in the side of our eye and also in our pocket, meaning to give us spiritual wisdom, spiritual sight, and also to protect us, give us parnasah, right? To help us during these 6 days of the week earn enough money in order to continue with our mission, which is being a light to the nations. After Havdalah, it is common to say Eliyahu Hanavi. And in Kabbalah, Elijah the prophet is closely associated with the final redemption of the coming of the Messiah. The song Eliyahu Hanavi expresses the longing for Elijah to arrive and announce the Messianic era. The song Eliyahu Hanavi expresses this longing for the Messianic age. So as we are separating the holy and the secular, we're also reminding ourselves that we need to be in a higher level constantly, that we, as we celebrate Shabbat and we finish Shabbat, that we are doing the work that will lead us to the Messianic age. By singing this song during Havdalah, we especially connect to the end of Shabbat, a time filled with peace, holiness, and it's a little taste of the Messianic era, right? Remember that we are tasting what Garden of Eden was all about, what the Olam Haba is all about, what the Messianic age is all about. And the transition from Shabbat to the weekday is seen as a microcosm of the broader transition from exile to redemption, with Elijah playing a key role in both of this. Also, the character of this force of Elijah is also regarded as a guardian protector, a protector. When we sing Elijah Hanavi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Havdalah, what we're doing is we're invoking this protective presence as we move from this sacred day to the weekdays. Also, Elijah was unique among the biblical figures because, according to tradition, he did not die. He ascended to heaven in a fiery chariot, existing in a state between the physical and spiritual world. This makes Elijah a bridge between these realms and a conduit through which divine blessing and spiritual energy can flow. So when we sing Eliyahu Hanavi during Havdalah, we're tapping into that connection, helping to draw the spiritual light and blessings of Shabbat into the weekdays. Also, this son of Eliyahu Hanavi introduces an element of continuity and hope. When we invoke Elijah this time, we are affirming our belief in an ongoing process of spiritual redemption and the eventual arrival of the Messianic age. This sense of hope provides a spiritual sustenance, and we live the sanctity of Shabbat and face the challenges of the coming week with different mindset. In Kabbalah, it is also taught that Elijah's or Eliyahu's role is not just one of announcing the Messiah, but also one of rectifying the spiritual and moral state of the world. So when we sing this song, Eliyahu Hanavi, we need to think that this has an element of tikkun as we ask Elijah to aid the repair of the world, both on a personal and a global level. The end of Shabbat is seen as a time to take a spiritual insight and elevations gained applied in the process of tikkun through the week. The presence of Elijah, is believed to elevate the spiritual potential of the mundane week. So when we sing this song, Eliyahu Hanavi, we are inviting his presence to infuse the week with his holiness, in this case, the holiness of Shabbat. Elijah is also considered one of the greatest prophets. Kabbalah teaches that prophecy is a high level of divine connection. And when we invoke Elijah, during Havdalah, by singing the song Eliyahu Hanavi, we're connecting to this prophetic energy that helps us navigate the spiritual challenges of the week. This act of singing Eliyahu Hanavi with this intention strengthens our spiritual intuition and sensitivity as we re-enter the physical world after Shabbat. So, seeing Eliyahu Hanavi during Havdalah is a deeply mystical practice that connects us to these things of redemption, protection, spiritual elevation, and hope for the Messianic age. And it serves as a bridge between the sacred time of Shabbat and the secular time of the weekdays, bringing with it the spiritual energy and blessings associated with Elijah the prophet. Now, to finish, because we are already 1 hour and a half, was our limit, here are the lyrics, right? Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu HaTishbi, Eliyahu HaGiladi, V'Yimerai B'Yamenu, Yavolenu, Mashiach ben David, Elijah the prophet, Elijah Tishbit, Elijah the Gileadit, may he soon come to us with the Messiah, son of David. Okay, that's a song. And he sung, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu HaTishbi. It's a very fun song to sing with the kids. So then after that, we just wish everybody Shavuot Tov. Shavuot Tov, meaning a good week, is more just than a simple wish. It carries deep spiritual significance as well. Basically, when we say Shavuot Tov, in Kabbalah, Shabbat is seen as the pinnacle of the week, a time of higher connection, right? And then when we say Shavuot Tov at the end of Shabbat after Havdalah, we're essentially expressing the wish that the spiritual light and blessings of Shabbat continue to flow into and illuminate the entire week. This is why we say Shavua, meaning week, and Tov, good. Because when God saw the light, right? God saw the light, say it was good, right? So that's what we want. We want the light of Shabbat to make the weekdays good. According to Kabbalah teaching, this time is cyclical. Each week is an opportunity for spiritual growth and rectification, meaning tikkun. And when you wish someone Shavuot Tov, we invoke the idea that the week ahead should be full of opportunities to elevate the physical world and reveal hidden sparks of holiness. And this is reflecting into the Kabbalistic concept of Tikkun Olam. Also, the phrase Shavuot Tov carries implications of balancing the attributes of Chesed and Geburah, kindness and judgment. When we do this, what we're doing is that Shabbat is associated with Malchut, right? Where all the energies of the week are gathered and harmonized. By blessing someone with a good week, you are essentially invoking a balance of divine kindness and strength throughout the coming days, ensuring that the week is filled with spiritual material success for the person. Also, Kabbalah teaches that each day of the week is attributed to a divine attribute, right? From Chesed to Malchut. Chesed is Sunday, Malchut is Shabbat, right? So Shabbat Tov, we express the hope that this new week will be a time for spiritual progress and rectification, as we said. And it's a declaration that we're entering a new week with positive intentions and a desire to align our actions with this divine will. Also, Shavuot Tov is a verbal blessing that seeks to protect the individual from spiritual and physical harm during the weekdays. In the language of Kabbalah, it's a way of sealing the blessings of Shabbat and extending them into the week, providing a shield against negativity. Shavuot Tov refers also to the manifestation of the divine will in the physical world. Each week is a new cycle, and Kabbalah teaches that these words have power. By speaking the blessing of a good week, Shavuot Tov, you contribute to the manifestation of goodness and divine favor in the world. And also, Shavuot Tov carries a subtle reminder of the ultimate redemption. Each week is a step closer to the Messianic age, when time itself will be perfected. Wishing someone a good week reflects the hope that this week will bring us closer to the redemptive state, both personally and collectively. This state that we call Gamar Tikkun, the end of all correction. So, Shavuot Tov is basically a way to transfer the blessings of Shabbat to protect ourselves. And connect with the sanctity of Shabbat. And it's a declaration to intend and carry forth the spiritual insights and blessings Shabbat, infusing everything with holiness. And also knowing that every day during this new week, we are closer to that redemption. And that's the importance of Shavua Tov, to understand that this is our mission in the world, right? We're not celebrating Shabbat only because it's a religious duty, or because we're commanded to do so, or because it was said by a Kabbalist that we need to do this. We're doing it because this is our duty as Kabbalists, to attract this light into the world, to be participants of that world, so we can bring that light into the nations. In that way we transform ourselves, and we can transform the whole world. And the world is in need of this light, especially these days that darkness is taking over. We need to be this light into the nations to make sure that some kind of change will happen. So manifestation of Elijah will happen, and the Messianic age will come. So I'll leave you with this thought, and I hope you have enjoyed this series of lessons on the mystical Shabbat. I will do probably another video, not as part of this, but it's going to be more questions and answers, because there's a lot of questions that people have, and it's going to be questions and answers based on the teachings of the Shabbat series lesson. Like I said, I hope you have enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Shabbat Tov, and later out.